It looks like it's 5 o'clock and that we do have a quorum present. So I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting of the Transportation Policy and Planning Board of February 6th to order. Sharon, if you can call the roll.
Yes. Roger Lancala.
Here.
Baltazar de Anda Santana. Barbara Harrington McKinney. Carolyn McAndrews.
Here.
Christopher McCahill.
Here.
Eric Paulson.
Here.
Oh, yay. Graham Foster.
Here.
Keith Furman.
Present.
Nikki Vander Meulen. Randy Udell.
Here.
And Thomas Wilson.
All right. Looks like we do have a quorum. Can we get the standard introduction as well?
Yep. Welcome to our virtual meeting. We're going to cover a few basic items before beginning. If you lose connection at any point during the meeting, you can reconnect by clicking the link or calling the number in your original email. To members and city staff, members, if you are able, please activate your video and keep it on for the duration of the meeting. Staff, if you're able, please activate your video when you're speaking. Use the raise hand feature when you'd like to be recognized to speak. Staff, click raise hand when you are asked a question. The chair will do their best on the call to call on committee members in the order in which their hands are raised. Lowering your hand will take you out of the queue. Members of the public who have registered to speak, the name you entered in Zoom must match the name you entered in registration. You will remain muted until called upon. The clerk will tell you when your time is up. After speaking, a member of the body may ask you a question. If you need to share documentation with the board, please send it to the email listed in today's agenda. Chair, the floor is yours.
Thank you. And I'll just make note that we do have some additional members. It looks like they have joined. Can I get a motion for approval of the minutes of December 19th, please? Moved by Badri, seconded by Carrie, is that right? Any discussion on that motion? Seeing no discussion, is there any opposition to recording unanimous approval? Seeing none, that's passed. Do we have any public comment for items not on the agenda tonight?
We do not as of 4:54. Nope.
Great. And then are there any disclosures or recusals from members of the body? Seeing none, that'll bring us to our first item of business tonight, which is Legistar 75510, amending the City of Madison official map to establish mapped reservations for future streets and highways in the City of Madison to connect Genomic Drive to Mineral Point Road and extend Charmony Drive between South Rose and Genomic Drive, consistent with recommendations in the adopted Odana area plan. Do we have, looks like Ben Zellers, are you here to share with us? Great.
Yes, and so I'll have a brief presentation and I'll actually cover both official mapping items on the agenda tonight. Both are related to the Odana area plan, so I'll just address both of those this evening. So thank you, everybody. Ben Zellers with the Planning Division. I'm here to talk about Odana area plan official mapping. As some of you may know, the Odana area plan was adopted by the council in September of 2021, covering this area shown on the screen, kind of bounded by the Beltline Highway, Mineral Point Road, and then the eastern edge of Research Park, largely a office and retail area of the city, looking to provide more land use diversity, integrate residential and mixed use into this as part of the Odana area plan. Official mapping, which is what is in front of you tonight, is governed by Wisconsin statute, and also there's a section of Madison ordinances on official mapping as well. Overall, the official map reserves and depicts land in the city that the city intends to use in the future for specific public uses, such as rights of way, which is what is being considered here this evening with these official mapping actions. And so really it's broken down in two major parts of the Odana area, Research Park, and then West Town and surrounding parcels. And the recommendation in the plan is to officially map future public street connections called out in map 4 of the plan and reserve sufficient public right-of-way to implement the planned street network. So the proposed street network that is included in the Odana area plan is shown on your map here, or on your screen here. Existing streets in gray, planned future streets in light blue, and then planned future streets for official mapping are shown in dark blue. And some of you may have seen, related to the Research Park portion of the official mapping, a letter from University Research Park proposing an alternate to what is shown on the map. And I can outline that for you right now. So Research Park is proposing kind of extending Charmony Drive straight to the west from its current intersection, as opposed to the plan recommendation that curves it to the south and hooks up with Genomic Drive there. Effectively, this would kind of revise the official mapping to potentially map some or all of that orange line. Then likely the result of that would be to remove this connection shown, circled in aqua, and then probably a related shift would be to switch this section circled in purple to planned future street connection as opposed to the official mapping designation. So this is something that we as staff met internally this afternoon to talk through, and feel that it's an appropriate, reasonable alternative. If it's something that the board wants to consider discussing tonight and making a recommendation tonight, we feel it really maintains the overall goal of the Odana area plan to break down some of the mega blocks that are present currently, provide additional connections, and improve the pedestrian conditions of the area. It really still achieves those goals. So certainly could be considered as an alternative to what the plan is showing. So as I mentioned, one of the big reasons why we're pursuing future street connections and this official mapping is to break down some of these mega blocks that are within the Odana area. The largest one being West Town Mall, which is about 172 acres. Second largest being in that Western Research Park area at about 118 acres. And overall, these block sizes are far larger than what's found in the Isthmus and downtown, where things are much more pedestrian friendly. Block sizes tend to be in the 2 to 4.5 acre range on the Isthmus and inner neighborhoods of the city. So we want to break down some of these mega blocks in this Odana planning area to bring some of that connectivity and walkability that's not currently present. So just some further additional points on official mapping. This will overall establish a framework for future redevelopment that we hope will generate a cohesive end result as widely varied property ownership opts to pursue redevelopment on their own timelines. Really, the varied property ownership is particularly applicable to the West Town, that West Town mega block, which I think has 15 plus, possibly 20 plus different property owners within that mega block. There are more official map streets planned for that or proposed for that West Town area to allow varied landowners to use the map streets as front lot lines, which is allowed, which would open up otherwise landlocked parcels to redevelopment, even if adjacent parcels continue to be used for low density retail. And so this official mapping in the plan will be paired with proactive rezoning, which is a separate approval by the Plan Commission that's not in front of you tonight, but just wanted to mention it because it's kind of interrelated. So the plan recommends that proactive rezoning only proceed if official mapping is approved, because we don't want to be in a situation where we potentially as a city proactively rezone parcels to allow more intensive uses, but not have the street network to support those uses. So another thing to mention, in addition to breaking down those mega blocks, is that official mapping with the street connections that go along with that will create more direct pedestrian routes to bus rapid transit, line A on the map here, along Mineral Point Road, as opposed to the current situation. And then mentioning that proactive zoning, and that really mirrors and integrates with proactive rezoning, kind of highlighted in those white boxes. And so this is something the Plan Commission will be considering later this month, and largely that would be proactive rezoning to regional mixed use, which is a much more intense development zoning for development and redevelopment that would be brought into play at select portions throughout the Odana planning area. So approval timeline, this was introduced at Council January 17th. Transportation Policy Planning Board, we're in front of you here tonight. This will also be going to BPW this week, go to the Plan Commission on February 27th, and then potential action by the Council on March 7th. And this was, unlike kind of the Oscar Mayer process, this was a recommendation, as I outlined, that was included in the plan itself. And as discussed in a staff memo, had a pretty significant amount of discussion at the Plan Commission level and notification of property owners that official mapping and proactive rezoning was being discussed as part of the plan development process. So with it being integrated into the plan, we are proceeding with implementation of that aspect of the adopted plan, and here to answer questions by the TPPB this evening.
Thanks for the presentation, Ben. Are there any questions? Chris, go ahead.
Thanks. So, Ben, could you just clarify? I think the maps that we're approving tonight are the ones that are shown in the Legistar documents. But what's the that alternative on the east? Is that something that we're considering tonight for a variation, or something you're thinking might happen in the future? I think maybe I just missed the background on that.
Yeah, so the alternative is something that Research Park brought up to us last week. And so what you would be acting on is what's in Legistar, those maps and the two Legistar files, for one for Research Park and a separate file for West Town Mall area. And so if you did want to recommend approval of both, you could certainly do that. If you wanted to recommend approval of one with, recommending the alternative for the second, that is also a course of action. So what I think if that's the action that's taken, we would discuss this also at BPW, bring it to the Plan Commission, and I think ultimately the council would decide, and the sponsors as well would need to decide how they would want to proceed. We would need to redraft a portion of that Research Park official map PDF that's in Legistar before the council would be able to vote on it, but that's certainly possible to do. And Alder Furman is one of the sponsors of this action, so if he's interested, could speak to his thoughts on the alternative as well.
Okay, thanks.
I'd also like to suggest, just procedurally here, since the presentation covered both items number 2 and items number 3, that we could consider having both of them up in front of us right now without objection. I don't see any objection, so just to be clear, if anyone has questions related to items 2 or 3, which were both covered in the staff presentation. I did have one question, Ben, in relation to that alternate that was asked for consideration. Has there been any analysis done on the impact for access to the transit on Mineral Point Road? So that essentially the pedestrian access to the planned bus stops on Mineral Point Road with either alternative?
Really, it doesn't appear that there would be substantial impact. We Really, it would shift that parallel road up a little closer to Mineral Point. So from the context of development or redevelopment taking place along that road, it may actually shorten some of the paths of that more intensive future development to bus rapid transit, because that east-west proposal by Research Park is a little bit closer to Mineral Point Road.
All right, thank you. I don't see any other questions, so if anyone has a discussion or a motion, would be great. Alder Furman.
Thank you. I would like to move adoption of Legislative File 75510 with a modification as requested by UW Research Park, as well as adoption of 75535.
There's a motion. Randy, is that a second?
Yes.
Great. It's been moved and seconded to recommend approval of both items 2 and 3 on our agenda with the modification that was shared with us that was recommended by Research Park. Alder Furman, would you like to speak to that?
Yeah, I can shortly. So when it comes to the University Research Park, and that is District 19, the district I represent, I was very involved in the Odana area plan. I'm very grateful to see us establishing this official map for both these areas. University Research Park has embarked on a big quest to better use their land, and appreciate that they provided us feedback on ways that we can tweak this so their very large parcels are much better utilized. So I am supportive of the mapping as well as this modification. Thanks.
Thank you, Alder Furman. Any other discussion? Seeing none, is there any objection to record a unanimous vote in favor of both items 2 and items 3 with the recommendation to accept the alternate that was proposed by Research Park? Seeing no objection, though both that motion passes and recommendations will be carried forward to Plan Commission. Thanks, Ben.
Thank you.
And next and final item on the agenda tonight is the Transportation Annual Report. And Tom Lynch is here with us to give that.
Yes, and I think I can fill up the next 2 hours because I know you guys are used to these. If we had a meeting under an hour, you guys wouldn't know what to do, right?
I will say for the record, this was the recommendation in the agenda setting meeting to shoot for a sub 60 minutes. So we'll see what we can do here. Go ahead, Tom.
All right. So I'm going to I did let's see how I'm going to do this. There's a report. Let's see. First, I'm going to ask a question because it's very tricky sometimes to run a slideshow while you're doing Zoom. Do you all see a blue screen with a transportation operational report?
Yes.
Okay. So if the slides progress, then we're all good. So over the weekend, I put in an operational report for the year 2022. It's one of the things that's actually written in my job description is to provide a report, and it's actually one of the more fun things that I do in the year. I normally take the Christmas slow time and just look at things. So first, one thing that's very interesting to me is transportation trends. This is traffic volumes, average weekday traffic volumes on 2 of our streets. One is Atwood Avenue and one is Park Street. You can see that if we look at October, which is I think is a good month to look because school is in session. We still have relatively, traffic patterns associated with normal fall activities. In the city of Madison, we're rising, but we're not yet quite to the level of 100% of 2019 traffic volumes. If we look specifically at some of the streets that feed our downtown now with the rise of telework as well as flexible traffic hours, the 8 a.m. and the 4 p.m. peak hour rushes that help feed our downtown businesses just aren't there as much. So while East Washington might be at 90 or 95% of our daily volume, you can see that our peak right now, this is I think a September, is about 67% of what it was in 2019, which is good because that means that we can allocate some of that space to other things, and we are allocating that space to bus rapid transit on East Washington. If you look at other places, though, we find that more of the regional highways and freeways, they actually have exceeded 2019 volumes. In fact, the Beltline east of Broadway is 103% of 2019. And then we all know that the Flex Lane was opened in July of 2022. And so if we just look, I pulled the hourly volumes from some of their traffic counters for the month, and you can see how, the peak hour volume from 7 to 8, May, June, July was between 9,500 and 10,000. And then as soon as the Flex Lane is initiated, that volume goes quite a bit higher, exceeding 11,000. So it's, it's kind of I don't know how you would want to say it. The Flex Lane was probably the least impactful and most efficient way of using a transportation facility to accommodate travel demands. But then, that adage that if you build a facility, people will start to use the facility is really true. And so we saw that on the Beltline. And then if we look at the average vehicle miles traveled, the Federal Reserve, for some reason, tracks us. I don't know how this fits into their function or their mission, but the Federal Reserve in Missouri tracks the national VMT per month. And so you can see in September of 2022, nationally, our VMT was about 104% of 2019. So nationally, things are going up. In Madison, they are not. We had asked the Greater Madison, a metropolitan planning organization, if they could calculate the VMT for the city of Madison and kind of exclude our communities around us and exclude the state route. And they interacted with streetlight data, which is a probe data using phone call, and you can see that they're able to do that. And so our VMT is still considerably below our 2019. And so this is 2021 data, okay? And the 2022 data will not be available until probably late March or April of this year. But they did look at a couple of months in 2022 from the streetlight data, and it looks like things are down. So right now, just looking at 21 data, for instance, Madison has a 14% decrease in all weekday traffic. And if you exclude the external to external trips, which is basically the freeway trips, the trips that enter on the freeway, on I-94 and then leave, we have a 20% decrease in weekday VMT. So that's actually, we just got this data about a week ago, and when I looked at this, I was surprised at how really good it is. We have a goal as a city to reduce our VMT for a variety of reasons, for climate reasons or Vision Zero reasons. Dane County, I think, has a goal of reducing VMT by 20% by 2050. And like this is very good news. I wish I could say that all of this was due to mode shift, and I'm going to say probably much of this is due to just the way we're working right now. We have a lot more telework, and so that telework is leading to fewer trips. Many people thought that the telework trips, and Chris, you probably are reading things about this too, that are just being replaced with trips to the grocery store or to this or that during the day. But in Madison, if this trend continues, I think we might have a kind of a new normal, maybe VMT set. Our bicycle trips are down 14% and 11%. Now these are the Capital City Trail and the Southwest Path by month. And I think, the same reduction that we're seeing in motor vehicle trips, the same reductions we're seeing in some of the metro, I think it's also affecting our bicycle commuters. You just don't see as many bike commuters for all the way through the week, right? I think you see bicycle commuters when they are working, but I think many offices have, in office 3 days a week and out of office 2 days a week or something to that effect. And so it is affecting our overall counts. Our traffic-related fatal crashes are down. We're about, I think it was 9 fatalities involved with 9 crashes. I pulled this map directly from the community maps from the TOPS lab. I'm not sure if the fatal crashes are shown or represent all the way through December or not, if that data has gotten in there or not. But if you remember last year, when we looked at our crashes, 5 of those crashes occurred right on East Washington Avenue. And so you could see that they were, directly associated with a single quarter. This is a little bit more distributed. You can see 2 crashes over there on Mineral Point Road, though. Metro Transit, we might be kind of in a new normal right now. The total October passengers were about, not quite, but almost 3/4 of what it was pre-pandemic. Okay. And our fare revenue, you might say, is similar, 3/4 of 2019. Now our fare revenue only makes up 25% of our operating. We receive other funds from other sources, but that kind of it's interesting information. We probably do anticipate seeing more passengers when the BRT is implemented. Many systems, in fact, if you look at a lot of case studies that look at different systems that implement BRT, they often will see a 10 to 15% jump. I think the only exception was, I think there was one in Orange County that did not see that jump, but every other surveyed system tended to see an increase in ridership. If we look at revenue hours, our revenue hours have not increased that much since the pandemic started for a variety of reasons. Obtaining bus drivers, having enough service buses in service, and the like. However, our ridership has increased, and so right now our October riders per revenue hour are at 27. In 2019, they were 33. But 27, this is a measure of efficiency, and it's I'm going to say, nationally, this is very, very good. This is easily within the top 5% of transit systems in the nation, and so it's not the same as perhaps San Francisco and New York, but I would argue that we are actually probably recovering better than San Francisco and New York because we have a large number of our riders are associated with the university, and then our downtowns have not been hit quite as hard as some of these larger, very dense cities, right? If we look at the parking division, I could give you the average September occupancy from 10 to 2 for all of the years, but I thought, well, let's just compare it to 2019 to kind of see where we're at. And our weekends generally have recovered largely. State Street campus is experiencing more occupancy than our downtown. Places where we're not seeing the revenue or the occupancy is during the weekdays, particularly downtown. You can see we're not making, we're not experiencing the same, the same kind of occupancy, and then we're also consequently we're not getting the same revenue that we would have from our downtown garages. So, our garages are a community asset, right? And we want to use those garages to support our businesses downtown, but we also want to be good stewards of those resources and make sure that we're managing them in a financially wise way, to provide revenue for the city and the different initiatives of the city. So that's something that we'll be working on and looking at more closely this year. Here, you can see that the majority of our revenue is from garage parking. A little bit of our revenue is from lot parking, and some of that will decrease because now the Brayton lot is out of commission. And then on-street parking, which is basically our meters, is a good revenue source, but it's it's maybe a quarter or a third of our garage parking revenue. To the left, you can see where our revenue is coming from. Now, this is a little bit misleading because it looks like our State Street campus is getting the majority of the revenue, and it is. But we treat the Lake Street ramp and the Francis Street ramp as one unit, because they're connected. And so that particular ramp has about double the spaces as the other ramps. And so, it looks a little bit misleading. However, we are getting the majority of our revenue from the State Street campus ramp. And so if for instance, we took the State Street campus ramp, Lake Street ramp down for a reconstruction of a mixed-use development or whatever, we would feel the effects of that revenue loss for a year or two while it's under construction. So that's the trends, and then I'll go through the accomplishments. Are any questions on that? Maybe I'm going to stop for questions or comments. Nope.
I guess, Tom, I'll just share one comment on the that looks like a lot of capacity in our downtown ramps. Just seems like a good good environment to really consider those alternative uses of kind of on-street parking space going forward. Obviously, we've got plans to open things up for additional cafe space or other uses, but it just seems to me that it looks like there's quite a bit of capacity in those ramps, and we could feel comfortable perhaps converting some of our on-street parking spaces to other uses. Just a comment.
Okay. This is going to be hard. It's going to be hard for me to stretch this out for 2 hours if I don't get more questions. So, accomplishments. Oh, okay. Alder Paulson.
I just want to ask quick on bike. So the weekday bike numbers are down. So the overall month numbers are down. What do the weekends look like?
I could look at that. I could actually, you know what I would do? I could send you the link to the eco counters, and that actually, you might like that because you can query them in the way that you want. You can get it down to the day.
Okay.
And so maybe that would be the that might be the best way to do it. And it's kind of interesting. We only have a couple of eco counters, so we can't tell where it is everywhere. But and so I'll do that. I'm writing that down.
Okay, thank you. And then one more. Those fatality, the traffic fatalities. Did that include bike car collisions?
Yes. Any fatality, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I could query them for you. We actually pulled that data a little bit sooner than we get the overall data because I wanted to put it in the report. In theory, come May, we'll have a report that lists all the types of crashes, by type A, type B, type C, and the like. But for the end of your report, I'd like to at least pull the fatalities, and that's relatively easy to do.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, accomplishments. 2022 really was pretty amazing. It was really a culmination of a lot of the work of this board. We got the Transportation Demand Management Ordinance was passed in December. That's actually been referenced for years, probably for decades, but there really hasn't been a consistent way of implementing it, and this got passed. We have worked with engineering. In fact, Philip just last week was working with Chris again to develop a kind of a consistent transportation improvement program methodology that looks at a variety of factors, not just pavement condition. This is a screenshot of how the ranking system would work, with graduated colors, and then also kind of compared it to our program projects. This is from a slideshow given a couple months ago. Last week they developed some new maps. We have the Amtrak location study. This was actually a surprise. We probably had between 100 to 200 people in person for the meeting, or the physically present meeting, and then another 700 wanted to attend online. We're looking at station locations in the colored areas on the map to the right. We're taking a small, maybe 2-month pause, and then we'll start to move forward again with that. We look at traffic engineering. They've got the Vision Zero Action Plan through and approved. That was in March of 2022. This was the first year of using the Safe Streets Madison methodology, and that got moved forward. Traffic engineering, complete green streets with a typology based on context along with overlays. This was passed, I think it was January 4th, right? But these are policies, this and the TDM policy, these are policies that will shape kind of the way we do roads, the way we look at trips and traffic for decades. The Metro Transit, the East-West BRT, we had the groundbreaking, and I think that was November, wasn't it? And this just looks like a picture, but what this picture represents is so much work. It's just so much work. We got the environmental document approved. We got 2 bid packages approved. Thousands of pages of plan sets. There was a bidding of the early works in the main bid package, a bus order for 46 buses, and then there's this groundbreaking. The Metro Transit, the transit network redesign. This was just passed. Final passing was in December. This happens once every 25 years, once in a quarter century. This is a big deal. And the fact that we did this and the BRT and all these other things is pretty amazing. And then Metro Transit also was dealing with maybe $20 million worth of facility improvements at their 1101 facility. This had to do with a couple of items. One was the bus maintenance base. You can see that they're working on to the right, a new driver areas, which you can see to the left, as well as gender equity bathrooms. When the facility was constructed, most of our bus drivers were men, right? Well, our ratio of genders has changed dramatically, and now we're able to provide facilities in a more equitable manner. For the parking division, we have the State Street campus garage approval, which means the zoning has been approved for this. It has to go before the UDC one more time, but this also includes an intercity bus terminal. And this is interesting because you don't see anything. It seems like, oh, this isn't that big a deal. But there were so many meetings to work through the details with this, to do the RFP with the developers to get a proposal that worked for both the developer and for us. It's not a sure thing yet, but most of the approvals that are needed for this, the developers agreement and the zoning, have been completed. And then finally, the PEOs continue to transition. There's been a couple hiccups through the year. We've taken most of the vehicles that have been located downtown in the Fairchild facility, and we moved them over to the Wilson Street facility. I gave them secure storage. And then right now, the planned interim home for the PEOs is going to be in a portion of the Town of Madison building, and we would like for them to be able to move in March or April of this year. So, if you, these are kind of the major initiatives that the board went through this year. So, when you look at this picture, I think you should feel really good. I'm impressed by how much transportation staff got done, but I'm also impressed by how much the transportation plan and policy board got done. Every single picture on this is a big rock. I think many cities would be satisfied to get a quarter of these things done in a year, and yet, this board really pushed through all of it. Now, Amtrak station is not fully completed, and the intercity bus terminal has a ways to go, but still, these are big deal items. And so, I put this in the letter in the front of the report. I think you should feel very good about what was accomplished. I think this is nationally, this is significant, I think. So that's it. That's spent 20 minutes instead of 2 hours. I wanted to do 2 hours.
Thank you, Tom. It was a great presentation. It is great to see everything presented in front of us. Obviously, this is more than even just 1 year's worth of work for some of these projects. They've spanned over several years. And I'm sure I speak for all of us to say that we are very grateful for all the work that staff has done on these, that was obviously the lion's share of the work in getting all these done. So it was a real pleasure to work through them as a member of the board. Any questions or comments from members on the report?
I'm going to, the staff did an awful lot too, but I'm going to push back on that comment, Alder Foster, and I'm going to say the board did a lot. I mean, think about the discussions of buses on State Street. Think about the hearing that you had for the transit network redesign. Think about, the developer comments and a lot of the stakeholders for the transportation demand management, the complete green streets. None of these were easy. And each one of these represented a very long meeting for the Transportation Plan and Policy Board. You know what I mean? So I think the staff did amazing too, but I'm not going to say it was easy for the board because the board had to make a lot of tough decisions on these. And I'm not going to, so I'm not letting you off that. I think right back at you. This is a big deal for the board. And you had to make some hard decisions and the board did it. And so I'm just going to say, the board should feel very proud of what has been accomplished.
Thank you, Tom. I think that's a compelling argument, so I will not argue it any further. Any other comments or questions from members of the board? Alder Paulson, go ahead.
I have a wacky out of left field idea. Not really idea, but question / could be an idea someday. Could we get this? Do we have data on how much railroad traffic is flowing through downtown and kind of what's on that and who are users of that? How many downtown, how many people actually need rail cars delivered to their business? And where I'm going with this is long term. Is it possible for us to start thinking about figuring out with the railroads how to route some of these trains away from the isthmus and around the city? And I realize this would be this is like 25-year project and an act of Congress to add some new rail lines outside of it. But if they're just carrying cars through and they're not really stopping and no one needs a load of coal anymore and things, like, could we think long term about, can we get some of this heavy train traffic out of downtown? I mean, the Amtrak station, if we put the Amtrak station downtown, we're going to keep it, whatever. But the hairball would be a lot easier if we didn't have that stupid rail line through it. And there's a bunch of stuff where, gosh, I'm just not sure this makes sense in the 21st century anymore.
So I think I would like to take that as a suggestion for a future agenda topic and let maybe Tom do some work on that, particularly since it's really not part of this agenda item and we didn't really notice a conversation along those lines. So if that's all right, Alder Paulson, can we take that as a request?
Yeah, it really was kind of could we start, what do we know about that? And we can think about that later. I do not want to propose that we solve rail traffic through the isthmus tonight, unless Tom's got a solution for it in his pocket.
Well, you're at 49 minutes past the hour, so we still do have the chance of closing this out before the hour's up. So I'll just put that out there as well.
Move adjournment.
Adjournment has been moved. Is there a second? Second by Badri and Randy. Any objection to adjournment? See none. There we go. Well done, Alder Furman. Good night, all.
Good night.